Hello, everyone, and welcome to the mill tonight. We have another special Stonemaier Spotlight video. This week, we are highlighting Red Rising, and Molly is, of course, with me again. And we have a couple new Stonemaier ambassadors to help us showcase Red Rising. We have Jason and Val, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little bit and tell you their involvement with Stonemaier. So, Val, you want to go first?
I've been an ambassador for about 6 months now, and my first introduction to Stonemaier was the site. So imagine me growing up with board games, your typical Monopoly and whatnot, and I didn't know that board games had actually a world outside of them. And then about 2016 or 17, I picked up site just because of the artwork, I'll be honest. And it blew my mind and opened a huge can of worms, I guess we'll call it. But yeah, so I've been a fan of Stonemaier since, and then I applied to be an ambassador. You know?
I similar story, but I've been started board gaming like 18 years ago. A friend introduced us to Ticket to Ride and Catan, took a little break from it, and then we got heavier into it about 6 years ago. My first introduction to Stonemaier was viticulture with my wife's siblings, and I loved viticulture from the first moment we played it. And it's still, spoiler, my favorite Stonemaier game. I haven't played a ton of Scythe. We own Scythe, but I haven't played it a ton. I know why people love Scythe, but I always come back to viticulture. Wingspan and Wormspan are up there, but I will play viticulture all the time. I became an ambassador in January. Been following obviously Jamie on YouTube for quite a while and all his stuff, and finally said I'll just put in a request to be ambassador, and I was happy to be selected for it, and even happier that you guys started doing these spotlight chats, and I'm excited to talk today.
Nice. Oh gosh,
You speak
viticulture
to
was
our
ours
hearts.
too.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
I was gonna say Scythe was mine.
Ice was yours, viticulture was mine. And surprising enough, that was like 6.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. All right. So you've heard a couple of your other games of Stonemaier you like. So why was Red Rising one of the ones when we kind of put it out there and you gave us some options of what you could talk about? Why was Red Rising one of the ones you wanted to talk about?
I'll go first if that's all right. I
Yeah.
put Red Rising out there because I think it doesn't get an. I mean, this is just from my perspective, right? My opinion. We're talking today, but I don't think it gets enough love for how good of a game it is. And I'm a massive Red Rising book fan through Jamie. I found out about the book through Jamie. Had no concept of the book, and I started listening to the audio. I listen to a lot of Audible when I say read a book. I started listening to the Audible long before the game got published because Jamie talked about it. And then when it came out, it was just amazing. And I think it doesn't get, and we'll go deeper into that today as we talk about it. It doesn't get enough love for the game that it is. And it was easy. It's easy for me to talk about viticulture. A lot of people love viticulture. It's easy to talk about Wingspan. A lot of people love Wingspan. You just don't hear Red Rising talked about enough. So that's why I put my name in the hat for that, because I enjoyed it enough, and it just doesn't get the love I think that it deserves.
Yeah,
Totally agree with
Mhm. I agree too. I have a similar story. It's like it's one of my favorite games, partly because of the books, but also I like the mechanics in it. And quite frankly, no one wants to. So, but no, definitely
that.
I put my hand on because I love the book. I didn't read all the books before the board game. I read one years ago, and then I had never picked up the rest. And then I played the board game, and it just blew my mind. You know, it's like I could read the books, and I did. But the cards will spoiled a little bit of the third book, I guess. But
Yeah, I started reading the books because of Jamie too, and it's actually a set I bought because I do a lot of Audible. Sanderson I usually listen to, but I
Oh yeah.
actually
yeah,
bought these. Yeah, and I read them because of Jamie's recommendation, and I think I finished the third book in the trilogy just before the board game came out.
It's funny. I also read them because of Jamie's
Yep.
recommendation. I did. Well, I say read. I did Audible as well,
Right.
which I just always want to shout out the song at the end of the first one.
Yeah.
I just love that. If anyone read the book, you can Google like the song in it. It's kind of like haunting a little bit.
Yep.
It's good.
Yeah, I even one of my board game friends, a guy I have a podcast with, he had never heard of Red Rising, though his wife is a librarian. And again, it's kind of like Jamie, the gift that just keeps on giving, the love for Red Rising, because I got Robbie into it, and he became a massive fan. And as he would get ahead of me in the Audible and some of the newer ones, and we were texting back and forth, wait till you get to this book, wait to get this chapter. So I'm thankful that Jamie got me into the books, and of course, it's just a bonus to have the game as well.
Nice. All right. So we've talked about kind of how we got into it and kind of what stood out for us in some aspects. So I know we'll probably get we might get more of the thematics a little bit in the spoiler section at the end of this, because we don't want to spoil too much of the books for people. But what about the game stands out to you mechanically and or thematically without spoilers?
Yeah. I'll go for it. Go ahead, Val. Okay. I like games where you play cards to do stuff. I'm oversimplifying that statement, right? But having cards that you can play to do things. And the fun thing about Red Rising is they're multi-use cards, right? Do I keep it for points? Do I play it for the deploy action? Or do I do something, deploy it, and then pull it later for those points? I like the fact that you have that decision point from it. Yep, we're holding up a card there. So if you deploy, you can take an action, and then later on, if you have it back in your hand, you have you're targeting the points for it. I love that many games are that way. Like Dune Imperium, I love that about that. Clank, I love the fact that they're dual use. You have to make that decision on what you want to do, and both of those decisions are really good. So I love that the challenge of figuring out how to do those things, and that's really among all the things, playing cards to do things are what really draws me to that. To one of the main reasons it draws me to Red Rising.
For me, it's there's two things. The first one is like the link to the book. So you don't need to read the book to play the game. That's again. But when you do, it just adds that little layer of like little wings, and you're just like, oh, okay, I see what you did there. So I really like that. Like while you're playing, you just have these little, kudos. And I like that.
Yeah, it's very subtle.
It's very subtle because it doesn't give you an advantage per se, but it's just it becomes more intuitive because you know this card might play well with this card because you read the book. So I like that a lot. And
they're little inside jokes, kind of.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just like a little wing. It's not game breaking or anything. And then my second thing is I really like games that challenges me to like kind of think on the spot and change my strategy. Because I'm very much someone who will pick a strategy and kind of stick to it to death. And sometimes it is a death. So if I'm Red Rising, you can't do that. Like you might start with like the 5 cards or 6 or whatever, but and then they're okay. But then as you see cards coming up, you gotta adapt. And I really like that because it just adds that layer of challenge that some other games might not.
Yeah, I love that as well because that constantly shifting strategy is like, do I go for it just so I can get the characters I really like from the book, whether they give me points or not, because that's just fun, or do I try to combo them perfectly? I took a photo, I played it the other day and sent it to my friend, and I just by sheer luck had Victra, Servo, the Howlers, and Mustang all in my hand, and it was just awesome. I didn't win. I actually finished dead last in that game, but it was so awesome to have all 4 of them together because I mean, I think to the books and everything that happens in the books, and it was just fun to have them all in my hand. So that shifting strategy of do I go for points and try to win, or do I just have some fun with getting the cards of these characters I really love?
I've definitely had a time where I got a card and I'm like, oh, I don't want this card. And I like immediately, I'm like, I didn't care. I didn't even look. I'm like, I gotta get rid of this card just because I didn't want it in my hand.
Yep.
Definitely done that. And then people who didn't read the book playing with me, they're like, why would you discard this card? And I'm like, I just don't like it.
Just trust me.
Yep. Yeah, it's my wife and son. We played it last week, and neither one of them read the books, and they were just I think they were getting tired of me being so excited to see Mickey the Carver come out, or Dancer come out, or the packs come out, right? Just getting so excited to see those things, even though I don't necessarily feel like I'm in the theme, but I feel like I'm in the books because I know these characters and I can think back to the stories of the characters.
Easily enough, I think I pulled a bunch of those. I have a couple other cards you just mentioned. Let's put those up there. I pulled some of them for later when we're talking theme. So it's like, oh. Yeah, there's a couple of ones you brought up. All right. Molly, you have anything to add?
I was just going to share the things I most love about Red Rising. Jason touched on one, multi-use cards. One of my favorite games is War of the Ring, which every card has a top for like the world kind of use and the bottom for battle, and you got to choose what you want to use them for, and I love having to make that decision, even though I'm stressed having to make those decisions. It's a good stress. And then the other thing is, and I know Carol can speak to this, I love Fantasy Realms, which this game is an homage / inspiration game. So it feels like when you start it, you're at home a little bit already.
Yeah.
It's a really good homage to Fantasy Realms, in my opinion.
Yeah. Definitely gives you enough familiarity, so it's a nice, easy transition.
What's
right?
Yeah. What's interesting about that is
it.
I played Fantasy Realms after Red Rising, and so it was because I came to it that way. I understand why people have that familiarity with Fantasy Realms because of the playing it and the quick play. But because I played Red Rising first, I actually, when I played Fantasy Realms, like, well, it's okay, but I really liked Red Rising. But I understand how there's that reverse dichotomy of those who came from Fantasy Realms to this, the challenge of which one they like more. Fantasy Realms was great, but I would always, because of the theme, because I'm connected to the Red Rising world, I will always choose Red Rising over Fantasy Realms for that reason.
If you played it in that order too, in Fantasy Realms, you might be missing the board, and you might be missing the playing the cards.
I played first. I think I learned about them very close to the same time. But Fantasy Realms packs up faster, so that's usually the one I travel with. It's already it's in my Gen Con bag right now. This kind of puts a timestamp. We're filming this right before Gen Con.
All right.
So, yeah. All right. So that kind of brings us to one of our other questions, really. Do you have any teaching tips for people, or maybe first game strategies, or like anything you can tell people either if they're teaching it or playing it for the first time? And I feel like that kind of connects with if they've played Fantasy Realms as well.
Right. When I teach the game, and too often I play with folks who really want to win, so it's hard to teach with folks who want to win. I tell folks just play cards, right? Just go through and play a card and see how it goes. Go through, pull this up, put something on the institute, put a card out, deploy it, take an action, pull it, go through that, because the game can be quick enough, because I've only played it 2 or 3 players. It's a quick enough game that, okay, now that we played through it, within an hour I can play it twice, and now that you've gone through that one time, you can go into that deeper strategy level. So when I teach it, I try to emphasize, here's the actions. The actions are really, really easy. You play a card and take that action, and then you pull a card and take that action. And that's it, right? When you think about a la Raiders of the North Sea, the basics of the gameplay are very simple. Much deeper strategy as you're trying to combo those cards together for points, but the gameplay is so simple. Let's just play the game and not worry too much about the points, and then we'll play it again afterwards. That if they liked it enough, the gameplay, we can play it afterwards, and then the deeper strategy of trying to combo those cards together.
Yeah, I'm more a open hand type teacher when it comes to this game, I think. So like I'll play everyone, we just show your hands and then we just take a few turns and see how it plays. But I think in overall it's an easy game to explain. Like it's not, there's some Stonemaier games a little bit more complex. But this one, I always start with like the goal of the game. I find there's so many people go explain the entire game and you're like, okay, but how do I win? Like I need to know. So I just start with that. And then I just break down, the different, like what you do on your turn. And then I just open hand this game. I think it's the best way to learn it. And, adapt to your group too, because some people don't like it. So that's okay. And then in terms of strategy, I think a bit like, you said, just play it, try a card, try to make links between them. I find Red Rising is good in terms of long term, because on the left of the card you have kind of like what they like, these type of cards, and what they don't like. So it's easier to have a visual. Like right away you pick a card, you might not know the characters, might not know, what they do, but you'll see that, maybe they like to be with gold and then they don't want obsidian. So then that way, overall, not to really look at these colors. I think that's an easy game to learn.
I remember when it first came came out, someone had kind of posted online. They had made like a little list of like in general what each color did. And so I had made these, gosh, whenever it first came out, I like printed these little sheets. So even if they didn't really, so if they didn't understand like why some colors might do what they do,
Right.
that at least they knew like, oh, I think it was the oranges and the gray. Yeah, oranges and the grays give you a little more flexibility if you're looking for certain colors and cards. So that way they would know maybe right away, like, oh, this is the color I might want or need.
Right.
So I remember someone made that very early on and posted it. I thought it was pretty handy.
This is where your knowledge of the book might help a little bit, because you know naturally what colors are going to be not. So that's where I think the little advantage might be, is if you do know the book, you know the colors and the characters too. Like some characters jive more with others, and most goals agree with each other, but there's specific ones that don't, and you know why when you read the book.
You have anything else to add, Molly?
Yeah, mine was similar to Jason's, I'd say. I find this game is easier to learn by doing. There's a lot of cards, they're all unique, which I love in any game, love a giant deck, but it can scare a lot of people. It scared my sister when I taught it to her. And also, like, some cards can increase your hand limit, and it's like little things like that that I feel like if you play a low stakes first game, then you're really gonna get into your second game where you actually like look at your scores.
This was a game that's made by a small lazy Susan.
Yeah. I do agree with that. We've tried to find a lazy Susan that spins good enough with the board on it, because that is the challenge if we play with more than three, because I have a game table. So if it's three, we kind of around one end. But if it's more than that, then it's a little more challenging.
Look at cake tables. We have big ones. I'm a cake decorator, and we have big ones for large cakes. Look for one of those. That's what I use.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Awesome.
We have like 14 inches, the biggest I own, so that's big enough for it.
Nice. All right. So obviously, this one, Jamie said, this game kind of encompassed the first trilogy of the books. And now it was supposed to be after the next trilogy came out that he was thinking of more, but now there's going to be another book. So him and Alex have not actually told us anything, whether they're thinking about another game, an expansion, they haven't really told us anything. I mean that wholeheartedly at the mill too. We know nothing. So just kind of what do you think, or what are kind of your hopes Jamie and Alex might add to maybe the future of this game, since now we have 3 out of the last 4 books are out? What are we thinking?
I would like, and this is only inspired by the fact that they've done both Wormspan and Expeditions, I would like a second game. Not, again, Red Rising the game is great, but I would like to have like a board game where you're taking more actions. I don't know what that would be, right? But I would love to go deeper, a little deeper in the thematics of being those characters doing those things in their world across the board. I would love to see to be able to do that in the Red Rising world would be awesome. Similar, we talked about The Witcher before we started recording. For those who like The Witcher, it is thematic. You can kind of go deep within there, feeling like your characters going from town to town and taking those actions. It would be fun to do that on the Red Rising side as well.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Oh, great. That would be really nice. I approach it more from like an extension point of view, the Red Rising. And for me, I'd like some of the relationships to be upgraded but updated because, it has changed throughout the books. So some of them, in the board game might be friends, but, they're not anymore. So, or, someone might have passed, or, and then the other thing too for me is searching the deck, having the ability to go get what card you really need. I think that'd be a neat way to expand the game.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. You're right, because when you think about it, and this isn't a spoiler, but in the game, Darrow is still a red. The whole story of Red Rising is Darrow becomes a gold, right? But in the game, he's still a red. But that's so little of the actual first book that it'd be fun to have a gold Darrow, and what could the gold Darrow do versus the red Darrow, and what does Severo do now versus what he did as in book one? Or it'd be interesting if they updated this edition of Red Rising those to replace those characters or add those different versions of characters. Same way. Not the same gameplay, but Lord Kana has multiple characters of the same people who do things, and they're different versions of those characters that can do different things. So maybe different versions of some of the Red Rising characters who have different abilities within the game.
Like it.
Neat. And they could interact with each other. Like a gold Darrow wouldn't like red Darrow.
I think it could go either way. A more stuff expansion, but also I feel like Dune Imperium really succeeded at like an alternate version of the same game.
Yep.
And I think this could be a really good situation to do that too.
Yeah. I could wow. All these possibilities. So hopefully Jamie watches this one. And he can just let us know what he's going for. I mean, get
just in the comments.
Yeah, just let us know which one to get excited for. Jamie. All right. So I'm gonna go with, I think, one more question before we go into full-on spoilers. But so we've brought up similarities to Fantasy Realms, obviously, and we've talked about some of that gameplay. So what kind of gamer do you think should seek out Red Rising? Or maybe like some other games they might have played and that might mean they should check it out. So who would you kind of recommend this game for?
Oh, I mean, the obvious one on the nose, if you've read Red Rising, even if you're not into games, because the gameplay is so easy, it's interesting to dive into that world. But within the gamer world, if you want a deep, heavy game, this isn't that, and that's not a knock on it, right? There's some deeper strategy as you try to dive through the deck to get the characters you want as much as you can, but it's not that heavy, crunchy game that so many Euro players like myself love. So it's definitely a lighter game that can be introduced to newer players for the gameplay. When I think about it, it's for those who want a lighter game that can be thinky at times, but the gameplay is fairly simple from a gameplay perspective.
I agree. And I think I would just add maybe the theme. Like some board games will have a theme that doesn't really play into the board game very much. Like it's just a worker placement game, and it just happens to be themed something. But this one, I feel the theme is used properly and like it adds to the game. So if people like space kind of theme, or I think that'd be a good theme to try.
Yeah. I think you guys covered a good chunk of it. You have anything else, Molly?
I think this game is good for people who are okay having a puzzle that they kind of don't want to ask for advice on, because your scoring, or fun part of your scoring, is secret in your hand, and that's not always for everyone.
Yeah.
And also, if you don't want to wait too long between turns, this is a really good game for you. And yeah, it's dripping with theme if you love the books. If you love dystopias, really, it's a good one to pique your interest.
The puzzle analogy is very good. I hadn't thought about it as a puzzle, but it truly is, because you're trying to get these pieces together to have the final picture that you want that's most conducive to you. I like that analogy.
And it might not go your way, but as board gamers, that's always the...
And the only thing I would add is I feel like if people have played Fantasy Realms and they want something maybe just a little bit heavier with a little bit more, this is like that nice step up with the board and some other ways to be getting points than just your hand. So, yeah. All right. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about before we go to a spoiler section?
Well, I'd like to highlight the obvious one as well, is that the artwork it truly is amazing. Even if you don't know the Red Rising universe, the board on the back wall there is just one of the most... It's probably one of my favorite covers of a board game that I've ever seen. It's just amazing. Like, even if the basic version's amazing, the upgraded version's amazing. The artwork on all the cards is, again, even if you don't know that world, when you look at it, it's very, very detailed, very cool looking, very artistic, but very thematic. It's the artwork is top notch. Of probably most of the games I played, it's probably my favorite artwork in almost any game I played.
Just like
Like,
point out
It's
too,
really good
people
artwork.
get the upgraded version. The gold foil.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Really
That
nice.
struck me like right away. So,
It made me want to sleeve them, and I'm not a card sleeve.
if you know,
I didn't sleeve them,
mine
but
are
it made me want
sleeved,
to.
and I do not usually sleeve. But I did for this one.
And Jenny had asked at one of the live chats, like an unboxing, that you remember. And I'd pick Red Rising because when you read the book and then you go to this and then you start seeing the characters, it's just so exciting. And there's so many of them. And then you just, you remember what happened in the first book with this one or with the third book. And it's just really exciting. And for me, it was like a really good experience. And I agree that the artwork is so beautiful, whether you read the books or not. It's really stunning to just look at them.
Nice. All right.
I feel like if I reread the books, I would picture the board game art as the characters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I looked at some of the cards again. I was reading the latest book, and I was looking at some of the characters. So I was like, oh yeah, what did they look like again? The standard now.
Nice. All right, ready for spoilers?
Let's go.
Spoilers sounds good.
All right. So we're gonna move into
Okay, here's
book spoiler territory. So if you have not read the books, or if you don't want us to spoil them, or if you are interested in those thematic touches and you don't plan to read them, this is your spot. All right. You ready for that, Molly?
Yep, look away now if you don't want to see or hear any spoilers.
All right. You guys want to talk about any favorite cards or factions or colors you have? Completely spoiling everything.
Yeah, it's the one that came up to me yesterday that hit hard. It was Lysander. So if you've read all the books and you know the story arc of Lysander is is Crusher, right? Because I learned to love Lysander, and then when he takes that turn, and so like I actually want to take the card out of the game because I'm so angry, right? At Lysander's for sure, and it was fun
You
to
both have it ready.
it was fun to see it come up, but then like. I really jump into because I loved Lysander for so long, and that's the life he was living with Cassius, and I felt like he was going to be the guy, and then he became the original OG Golds, essentially, right, in its own way. So that's definitely one.
The Jackal's the one that I threw away. Not threw away, but
Right.
And, as we were going through the game and I got the Jackal in my hand, I'm like, no! Not playing
The
it.
same card for me too. I don't like the same.
Yeah,
That was heartbreaking.
for sure. Another for me
Yeah.
is Ragnar, and I just have thankfully my Ragnar is signed by Jamie. One of the random signed cards is the signed one, and of course Ragnar is fantastic. But to have that just be one of the ones I got the random card signed by Jamie, so that's always a favorite when it comes out.
I got Mustang.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
That's cool.
And it was one of the originals, so it was signed by Alex too.
Oh, I don't have any
Oh,
signed by
cool.
Alex. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that one I don't even have in here. I keep meaning to. I have like some signed cards. I keep meaning to put in like a frame in the board game room.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, that one's still separate.
I don't have any signed Red Rising ones.
Me
I got
neither.
4 signed cards, and I got a Scythe 2 combat card, then a 3, then a 4, then a 5.
You got the collection.
Yeah, I have a bunch of unfortunately I have a bunch of Euphoria and Tapestry, and I don't own either of those games. So I know in Discord there's a channel to go trade cards, so I just need to go try to trade them because I will eventually get those games, but I don't own them right now. So I have a bunch of those.
No, I
The card
once I got
that
the
I get the feels with... Oh,
I was gonna say once
You
I
go
got the
ahead.
Mustang, I stopped adding them. So I'm like, I'm not gonna beat this.
No, that's the tops.
card that gives me the feels, I think you have it to hold up, Carol, is the packs.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that anyone watching this knows why that
That's a great one.
is.
Yeah, and that's what's fun about this too, because of the spoiler side. When I had not gotten through the rest of the books when I got the game, I'd only gone through the first one, and I got diverted to other books I was listening to. So now when I come back to it now and have gone through all the books, like, oh wow, the Pax and the Quietus and the Invictus, and I'm like, oh wow, it hits more, like you said. It gives you the feels to know more of the stories that go along with it. Orion's another one, a heartbreaking story in the long run, right? Orion's a blue, and it's just it's a great story, but then a crusher at the end.
Yeah, that's what I felt about the one that like you just hate him almost all the books, and then as he turns good, he gets killed right there. And I just remember being so frustrated because it was just like all other characters that there's a lot of death in the series, obviously, because it's not a kind world. But like when you see these cards, you know they're gone. It's just that little itch, you know. And Eo, it's like I think this is why Darrow is red in the board game because of Eo. Like, they should be together, right? And like to me that makes sense. But I agree with you that Darrow is more gold throughout the book. Yeah. But I think when I get those two cards together in my hand, I'm just like I can't let them go. They just have to stay together.
You have to go for that.
Yeah.
Another great one is I think I'm not 100% on her name. It's been a bit. It's Evie's card.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The pink.
I have Evie right here as well.
Yep.
So.
The pink.
I love it that. I like
bombing.
it right here. Got it.
Yeah.
That one makes a lot more sense when you've read the book. It's a great card.
Well, along with that, I think probably one of my favorite thematic ones is Mickey.
Yep.
Like not necessarily favorite character, but man, you may banish a red from your hand if you do reveal cards from the deck until you find a gold. I mean, it's so thematic. So him turning a red into a gold.
Definitely.
That one always stood out to me as like, oh, you got that one right. Yeah, I also have. This is not the Sign Mustang. That one's somewhere else, but yeah, hers is a good one too for. Theme, gain one banished card if that card is not a gold banished Mustang.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very, very thematic for her. All right. Let's see. So, are there any? So we kind of talked about some of our favorite cards. Are there any favorite for, like, just involving the colors? What did you think of how like the different colors came into play within the game and like the different styles of play each color has?
My one major feedback on that is that and we've learned this because we hadn't played Red Rising in a while, and then we replayed it a few times to get prepped for this, was that I forgot that in the game, if someone ends up the end of the game with 6 or 7 cards and you only have 5, you're gonna have a really hard time winning. And if you're trying to win, it's tough. But we realized very quickly the purple cards are really key to getting more cards into your hand because of just some of their actions between the blogger and the reporter. So when I was talking to my son playing, I was like, if you can an eye out for cards that you can add to your hand. When we first got the game a few years ago, we were like, well, how do you get more cards? And we just couldn't kind of figure it out. But then as you play more and more, you realize, okay, there's certain things that are going to give you that boost to try to boost your cards up, as well as starting with, forgot which series I think it is. Series starts with an extra card. So
yeah.
But that's for the harder, for the deeper gamers who want to go deeper in strategy. I always highlight the purple. I think it's violet. Technically is the color, but those are the ones that help build up your deck some.
Yeah, those are the artists. So that's why it's like they're so out there, as you said, more advanced, more unusual conditions.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought, and I didn't realize it at first until I was like looking at these. The yellows are doctors, like recover banished cards. So like a lot of the yellows have to do with kind of recovering the banished cards. I thought that one was kind of cool. And the obsidians kind of being the opposite, since they're assassins, they banish a lot of cards.
Right. Yeah, and the silvers are bankers, I think.
Financiers, yep.
Blue is for the fleet, so usually around going up that track. Yeah, I think the colors make sense. It's one of those little, like when you read the book, it adds to the game because it's very clever how they incorporated it. And I remember years ago, I guess 2 years ago, there was a review that came out that, the person, one thing they didn't like was the houses. They thought Apollo, for example, was a little bit, overpowered, which made me chuckle because when you read the book, you know why. You know why they take the personal at first. So it's just, and for me, it's like when I play against Apollo, I really want to beat them. So, I think it's those little clever, things they put in the game that makes it even extra.
Yeah, very much. All right. I think we've hit most of my questions. Is there anything else spoilery or that you don't feel like we've covered that you wanted to highlight for this game, for its connection to the book, or really just anything in general you want to highlight about this game before we close out?
I would say, and this is regarding gameplay, and we may have kind of highlighted on it, but with any game in which there's a deck of cards, sometimes you're at the luck of the draw of the deck, right? So going into play it to play the game as opposed to min-maxing. A younger Jason was hardcore min-maxing. The older and wiser Jason plays to have fun, which is a crazy concept when you play board games. But if you play to have fun in that game and accept the fact that when you have a deck of 100 and something cards and they're not all going to come out, sometimes you get a bad draw. Because I had a couple cards in my hand, or we played a game the other day, and every card said, well, if you do this and this color's here, take this action. Well, those colors were never out. It was fine. I was still okay with that, but if you're newer to it or you're trying to min-max, you can get frustrated with that. Sometimes it's the luck of the draw of the deck that's going to drive that game, and like Val said, sometimes you have to pivot. Like, okay, well, now you got to give up the cards in that hand and go for other cards to see what it can do to help with that. But you have to live with the luck of the draw on the deck of cards as it comes to the game.
Very much.
And I think for me, I would just add maybe the portion of the game for the solo mode is probably one of my favorites. So I would definitely recommend it to a solo player. It's probably like the most clever one I've seen.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, I play this one solo more, I think, than multiplayer, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
I think we covered a good amount. I would just add, although we're in the spoiler section, so it doesn't super apply, but anyone listening, if you find you like this, you get to find a good board game and a good book trilogy at least, and it's always worth it to dive into that. I love when media mix like that, and it's just, I feel like you can see from us reminiscing about all the cards. It's just a great time.
Yeah.
Very much so. All right. Well, I think we will call it then. So, Jason, Val, thanks so much for coming on and being on our Stonemaier Spotlight and helping us geek out about Red Rising book and game, essentially. And we will see you later on the mill, everyone, with another Stonemaier Spotlight sometime.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
See ya.
All right.